As the world seems so divided, on the brink of wars on so many fronts, I find myself thinking back to a time when the world seemed on the brink of lasting peace. I still get goosebumps and sometimes get tears in my eyes when I think back to one of the most beautiful moments of my life, standing in the stadium on Montjuic in Barcelona for the opening of the 1992 Olympic Games. I still thrill to the memory of the hopes for world peace that we all embraced in that city for 2 weeks. I should preface this by saying, first, that there is a world of difference between being at the Olympics and watching the games on TV. It's kind of like the difference between looking at a postcard of the Grand Canyon and standing on the South Rim. I learned that at the first Olympic Games I attended in Los Angeles in 1984. This may sound like hyperbole, but it's not. I think the opening ceremonies of those games were the high point of the human race as a body of nations. Certainly in my lifetime, probably in a century, possibly in history. Remember when this was and what was going on in the world. The Gulf War had just ended. The Cold War was just over. The planet was closer to world peace than it had been in centuries or has been since. For the first time ever, all 169 countries that were members of the Olympics came. For the first time in 2 decades, there were no boycotts. South Africa was allowed back in after abolishing its racist policies. Both Koreas were there, both Chinas. Germany competed as one nation again. All of the newly independent former Soviet republics were there, Latvia, Kazakhstan, and the rest. Many so new they didn't even have flags yet and just carried a generic white flag with the Olympic rings emblazoned on it. If they won a medal, some of these countries played the Olympic hymn since they didn't yet have a national anthem of their own. The PRK country code at the top of this scoreboard stands for the People's Republic of Korea, what we Westerners call North Korea. The TCH next to the bottom athlete was for Czechoslovakia, which was still competing as one nation before they split into the Czech Republic and Slovakia the following year. EUN on this scoreboard stands for the French Équipe Unifiée, meaning unified team, which is a designation for some of the former Soviet republics who banded together to be able to compete. Serbia competed as an independent nation. Even Afghanistan, still winding down from its war with Russia, sent representatives, although it had no athletes in the games. After a dazzling, colorful show depicting the art and culture of Spain, and Catalonia in particular, including some references to their favorite son, Salvador Dali, and after all of the welcoming dances and speeches, the Parade of Nations began. The Olympics are very much about tradition, so Greece, the originator of the Games, always enters first. And when it went on and on, longer than it ever had before, with especially big rounds of applause for teams that had struggled so much to be there, teams like Iraq and Serbia. More than 9,300 athletes packed the field, more than had ever come to an Olympics before. Then the most moving part of the ceremony began. The lights in the stadium were shut off. An arrow lit from the Olympic torch was fired across the cauldron to light the flame. A taper was lit from the cauldron. We, the audience and athletes, were instructed to get out the candles we had been given as we came in. The light from the Olympic flame was passed around the stadium, candle to candle, all of us sharing the same light. Then a small spotlight hit the stage at the end of the stadium, not far from where I was standing. In the light was a boy, maybe 10 or 12 years old, dressed all in white, and he began to sing the Ode to Joy, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, Fourth Movement, lyrics by Friedrich von Schiller. It was later adopted by the European Union as their anthem. The fact that the words and music were written by Germans was not lost on the people of Europe, where Germany had caused 2 world wars in that century, and even the Germans were singing of peace. The young man sang the first verse in German with no accompaniment in his beautiful, clear alto voice. Then 3 more lights hit the stage, and Placido Domingo, Jose Carreras, and Luciano Pavarotti were there. These 3 tenors sang the second verse, their voices blending with that of the young man. Then more lights hit the stage, and an all-girl chorus, also garbed in white, added their soprano voices to the 3-part harmony. You could feel the hope for world peace in the air. Then they turned the lights back on, asked us to extinguish our candles, take the hands of the people next to us, and join in singing the chorus, the words to which were then displayed on this giant screen in about 17 different languages. On the field, a scramble occurred as members of the two Korean teams sought each other out to hold hands. Members of the U.S. team made their way to the Iraqi team to take their hands. The two Chinas embraced, and the former Soviet republics forged new bonds. I didn't see a dry cheek in the place, and even reading this now, I'm getting choked up. We all openly wept for the hope that was our future as the human race living in peace and harmony. A beautiful silence followed as the accords settled over all of us. The only people who let go of their neighbors did so just long enough to hug or kiss them. I don't have many photos of this moment. I was so absorbed in the moment that I didn't want to break the awesomeness of the spell. A lot of the most memorable moments I never captured on film because I didn't want to let go of the hands of the people next to me. There was an acute moment when other athletes traded their shoes for the wooden shoes of the Dutch team and began dancing. For perhaps 15 minutes, there was a near silence. No one dared disturb the peaceful feeling that had fallen over us. There were quiet murmurs of friendship and love, but like whispered greetings at a funeral in a cathedral, no one wanted to speak loudly and ruin the mood. Then they announced the ceremonies were closed and they asked us to leave. As with all the other announcements in Barcelona, all the announcements came in 4 languages, and they asked us in 4 different languages to leave. No one did. People were dancing even though there was no music. There were outbreaks of hugging throughout the stadium, the way fights will sometimes spontaneously erupt at 20 spots around the stands in a football game. Then they asked us to leave again, in 4 different languages, alternating male and female voices. Again, the only movement was more hugging and some more dancing. A little while passed, and they again asked us to please make our way to the exits. No one exited. The announcement came again a few minutes later. This time, they sounded more forceful and added that they needed to get the stadium ready for the track and field events the next day. This did nothing to disperse the crowd, so the police were sent for. They entered the field level and lined the rim of the track facing the stands. They looked helplessly at each other. Nobody wanted to be the first to swing his club. They looked at the fans and shrugged. At the risk of sounding like an old hippie, there was so much peace and love in the air, a violent act was impossible. Soon the police began dancing with the athletes. Spectators reached across the railings to hug the cops. I tried to take photos of this, but they had turned the lights out again in an attempt to force us to leave, so the photos are too dark and blurry. The PA announcers pretty soon lost interest in what they were supposed to be saying and started sympathizing, saying things like, "We know you're not really going to leave, but would like to ask you one more time." After hours and the exhaustion that comes from a long session of lovemaking or a hike in a beautiful forest, a lull fell over the crowd. We were spent, hugged out and cried out, our emotions having hovered near nirvana for so long that when they announced the last subway of the night was coming, the crowd finally began to file out. Unlike the pushing and shoving that often accompanies a stadium exodus, this was the nicest, most orderly group I've ever been a part of. Even getting on the subway, it was unlike any rush hour I've ever seen. There was no anger or hostility, treating those around them like their invalid grandmother. "Please, no, you go first." "No, you go first." "Please, you sit, I'll stand." We all knew we could make this feeling of friendship and generosity last. As the games wore on and the controversies began, some of the love dissipated, but we still had hope. But then it disappeared quickly enough as the world again went to hell. After experiencing that high for those few hours, a feeling I don't think many people have had, I still hold on to a piece of that peaceful joy and hope that somehow we will find our way back to that magic again, and it somehow will find its way to the countries that so badly need it, including our own. Have you ever been in that larger crowd that was so peaceful and loving? Have you ever experienced such a moment of joy and hope? Let me know in the comments. Next on Walt's Wanderings, I will share some of the amazing encounters I've had with animals in the wild, focusing on some of my adventures in Grand Teton National Park. Come along, won't you? And don't forget your bear spray just to be safe. And please remember to like and subscribe.